I'm the #1 endless player in Monkey Tower Defense, and in this video, I'm going to break down the strategy I use and strategies you can use to achieve high amounts of waves in endless mode. So stick around to find out exactly what you can do to get better endless matches, and most importantly, how many sapphires you can make doing this. So the loadout that I usually use on endless is RPG, Hunter, Villain, Pirate, and Freezer. And once we get into the game, I'll show you exactly where to place them and what they do. For this first wave, if you want, you can just let the first few enemies reach the end of the track because they don't do enough damage to kill you. But what I like to do is place some Freezers that do damage to actually kill them, which makes starting the game a lot quicker than it usually would. And what I like to start with is a Villain right here in this part of the loop, so it hits as many enemies as possible. It has a lot of single target damage, so it can get rid of a lot of high health enemies really quickly. Once I've built up some money, I like to start placing RPGs in the middle of this loop right here. I like to place down a lot of level 3 RPGs instead of maxing one out, just because they do a lot of damage really quickly, because they have a pretty fast fire rate and a lot of AoE damage, so it can get rid of lots of clumps of enemies pretty quickly. And now I place a Hunter right behind the RPGs just so they can hit this far side of the loop and work on getting down and upgrading all of my villains, and then eventually Pirate. A lot of people think Musician is better to use than Villain, which if you only have a Musician, 100% go for it. But the DPS of Villain is over double that of Musician with only the cost of a little bit less range and one less placement. It doesn't matter where you're placing your towers as long as they can hit the entirety of this first loop. So it's important to go in and actually see how much range you can get out of them. Like right here, I could have definitely placed these RPGs back a bit more and gotten more damage off the end of this road here. And now that I have all of these guys placed down and upgraded, it's time to put down my Freezers. Freezers are the most important part of getting high waves in endless mode, so it's important to have them in pretty good locations, so this is usually what I do. I'll have them pretty evenly spaced out throughout the first loop, and I make sure to put them in corners where they can hit them multiple times. So really quickly, I'm going to break down exactly what each tower does and why it's so important to bring these in specific to do endless. One of the highest damaging AoE towers to get rid of these clumps of enemies really quickly, as once it attacks once, it'll attack all of the enemies in one group. Same thing goes for Villain, but it has almost 300 more DPS but a lot less range. And I use Hunter as a single target tower to take down really high health enemies like the boss. And if you don't already know, every 50 waves past wave 100 there is a boss, so Hunter is going to be extremely important. And for Pirate, for the most important part about it besides the 600 DPS it does, are these ships back here that deal 5,600 damage per. These ships are extremely useful. Every once in a while, some of these large groups of enemies will have one or two that get past the main defense, and I assume if you're doing a high round endless match, you're not going to be wanting to sell and replace towers every few minutes. And finally, the most important part of this loadout, Freezer. Not only does it freeze the extremely quick mobs, but when the boss comes, it'll slow it down by more than 5 times, giving your towers a lot more time to deal damage on it and making it a lot more AFK friendly. And as you can see right here, there's a lot of high health enemies going through, and so these ships at the back are gonna actually take care of them without us having to move anything. And there we go. So here comes wave 100. We're gonna see how well our defense does against the boss. Here comes the boss. As we can see right now, the Freezers are slowing it an insane amount right now. And here, as we can see, it almost reached the end of the track, but with the pirates and their ships spawning, it was able to take it down before it actually reached our base, making this 100% AFKable. This strategy isn't the fastest, as the more people you have playing endless with good towers, the easier and quicker the waves, especially the boss waves, are gonna be, but this method makes 120 sapphires an hour, not counting the few minutes it takes for each boss wave. Now I'm gonna move on and show you how you could do this yourself and make up to thousands of sapphires completely AFK. Wait, if you're enjoying the video or finding any of the information useful, make sure to subscribe and like the video to show me you are, so I'll make more guides and tips for Monkey Tower Defense in the future. Let's keep going. I'm pretty sure the only way to AFK endless without leaderboard towers is as a duo, so I ended up switching up Hunter for Ninja and Pirate for Surfer. Once again, placing down a Villain right here. So the start of the game is going to look pretty similar to how it did in the solo run that I just showed you. The starting waves of endless are pretty easy, so if you're using an alt account, you don't need to worry too much about switching back and forth to place towers. So around in this area is where I start placing down ninjas. So now on my alt account, since the waves are starting to get a bit harder, I'm going to start placing down towers, and I'll show you exactly where I would put them. So about right here in front of the RPGs, I would place down a minigunner. And for the Atrides, I'll place it right behind the villains, just because they have a tad more range. And for Musician, I'd try and place them around the same spot that I did for Ninja. And for the Surfer, I would place it just behind the RPGs, just because it has such a large range. The Surfers fill a pretty similar role to the Pirates, as they spawn these sharks at the end of the track, and they're pretty good for cleanup, though they have not as much health. There's an extra one, and I'm pretty sure they spawn faster. I could be wrong though. And for the final thing we need to place down, it's going to be the second set of freezers. So we're going to try and evenly space them out as we did with the first set. Place one here at the end of the loop right here, and then try and put them in between any two freezers. So now that we have everything placed down, this should be about what our defense looks like. So I'm going to come back on wave 100, and we're going to see how well it deals with the boss. So here's wave 100. So once the boss comes out, we'll be able to see exactly how well our defense does. It's already at half health, and it's not even halfway through the first loop. And there we go. And this method is a lot better than the solo method I showed you. As you can see, it didn't even get past the first loop. So instead of killing the boss within 6 or 7 minutes, it only took 1 to 2. This method ends up making the same amount of sapphires per hour, being 120. But taking into consideration the boss waves, you're saving around 5.5 minutes or 6 sapphires every 50 waves, making this the fastest method you can AFK with. If you'd like to see more, keep watching and click the video that's on the screen right now. I'm sure you're gonna love it. Alright, bye.